Well, for better or for worse, welcome to Red Dwarf USA, or as some fans like to call it, Red, White, and Blue Dwarf. Basically, by season 5 or so, Red Dwarf was doing well enough that Universal Studios was interested in doing an American version of the show, along the lines of The Office, which actually came out about 3 years later, but it's still a good example of a British comedy being brought over to the US successfully. In fact, because I'm sick of people holding up Red Dwarf USA as an example of how Americans ruin everything, here's a quick rundown of well-received American sitcoms that were based off of British sitcoms. Please notice that one of them is All in the Family, one of America's best-loved sitcoms. So, now that we've put that theory to rest, let's take a look at Red Dwarf USA. Keep in mind that it's being made for a different audience, so naturally some changes were made. One of which is that 4/5 of the cast is different. Yeah, for some reason they only kept Robert Llewellyn. Not that I don't love him, it's just surprising that they didn't take an all-or-nothing approach. And also, why him specifically?
I don't think it's because they thought I was really an American and they wouldn't have to get me a work permit and a visa.
And not with your fake American accent, they didn't.
But I do suggest that Mr. Rimmer and I go on ahead as a scout party.
Still love you though, you big goof. Another change they made is that they more or less followed the pilot of the UK version, but they also tried to include elements of later episodes, like the inclusion of Crichton and a female Holly. Speaking of references to later episodes, we actually open on an intentionally too fast text crawl, like the one from Backwards. Kind of an obvious gag. It starts off talking about what the future is like, then during the too fast to read part it devolves into the writer complaining about having to write it, and then slows back down on, which you really need to know to understand this story. Oh, and you're gonna have to excuse the bad video quality. This was made in 1992 and was never officially released anywhere. This is the only way to view it other than some better quality clips on the Dwarfing USA documentary. I'll use those when I can, but they are few and far between. The original cast was really unhappy that some clips of them were in the opening despite them having been left out of the project, and fans tend to complain about the theme song being different. For what it's worth, like I said, this was never released anywhere, and it's very possible that this opening sequence and/or the theme song were placeholders. I mean, when you've only filmed one episode, there are only so many clips you can get out of that. If the show was greenlit, they probably wouldn't have made a final opening sequence until after having filmed the whole season. Anyway, the audience is treated as if we've just boarded Red Dwarf and are being given a brief tour by Holly. It almost feels like a documentary for a few minutes.
My name is Holly.
By the way, I know it's hard to tell with the bad quality, but in case you recognize her voice, Holly is played by Jane Leeves, who would go on to play Daphne Moon in Frasier. But for what it's worth, I like her a lot in this.
Since he's a projection, he can't touch anything except himself.
So basically, my sex life is unchanged.
That's a cute line, but I have a hard time imagining someone willingly saying that about himself. Have I mentioned today that I masturbate because no one will sleep with me? I'm so quirky. Anyway, apparently it was Crichton getting the tour because he's just boarded Red Dwarf along with the spare head.
You should have made a left at the last intersection, Crichton. Boy, I hate backseat drivers.
Meanwhile, now they're basically doing the opening scene from the original Red Dwarf where Lister and Rimmer are introduced in mainly the same way, along with a couple of scutters.
Are you eyeballing me? All right, Buster, no oil for a month. See what a little rust does for your sense of humor.
Somehow their design is less cute. I don't know why, though.
There are 5,000 people on this ship. You're in charge of me and 2 animated shoeboxes.
What's kind of funny is that the actors playing Lister and Rimmer, respectively, are Craig Bierko and Chris Eigman. So, however different they are in every other respect, they have the same first names as the original actors. So yeah, for some reason they decided to go a more Han Solo route with Lister, which is kind of random. The fans rail on that a lot. I am less bothered, but I get what they mean. I do think that Craig Charles is adorable, so Lister being good-looking in general isn't a problem for me, but Craig Charles isn't really what people would call Hollywood good-looking. Plus, the wardrobe department did a good job with having his clothes stained and such, where Craig Bierko pretty much is Hollywood good-looking and he's a lot cleaner. His version of Lister comes across more like a slacker than an outright slob, but he does a really good job with what he's given and I can't hate him. By the way, they pulled a lot of gags from various parts of the series, which is fine, but some of them come across as a bit forced.
What's your name?
Crichton. Well, my full name is Crichton 2XB 517P. Although I don't really like the 2XB part. I think it's a rather jerky middle name.
Crichton 2X4B 523P. That's your full name.
Personally, I don't much like the 2X4B. I think it's a jerky middle name.
The original led into Crichton talking about his middle name a lot more gracefully because Lister asks about it. I mean, I wouldn't introduce myself by saying, "My name is Dina Mary Natalie." However, I don't like the Mary very much because it doesn't quite fit with the rest. I know Crichton is a robot and therefore prone to being socially awkward, but the joke comes across as kind of forced because of how unnatural the wording is.
What brings you out into deep space?
Got into a drinking game. 1 minute I'm sitting in a bar in Detroit. Next thing I know, I'm waking up on a park bench on the fourth moon of Saturn wearing absolutely nothing but a traffic cone on my head.
So this Lister ended up on Red Dwarf because he got drunk and lost all his money? I don't recall if that's what happened with the original Lister, but I'll buy it.
Here is the one reason I don't go totally and completely crazy. Is she beautiful?
Now we're introduced to Kochanski, and a lot of this characterization gets used in the later UK series. She and Lister were dating, but now she's breaking up with him because she thinks he's beneath her.
Right, you want to offline, shut down for a minute or something?
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to be dumped in private. How insensitive of me.
Also, I have to say, Crichton is really cute in this bit. A bit later, Lister tells Crichton about his plan to live on a farm with Kochanski.
It's like everything that's good and pure is in this photograph.
Where did you get it?
I swiped it.
And then we find out about Frankenstein.
Where you gotta hide him somewhere where Holly can't find him.
This version is so sweet. Look how she's clawing affectionately at Lister. My cats hate being picked up like that. But yeah, the one in the original series was sleeker and prettier, but she kept trying to get away. At least this Frankenstein seems to actually like Lister.
I got him on shore leave on Titan.
Anyway, I do like the idea that Lister actually rescued Frankenstein.
They eat cats on Titan. Saw him through a restaurant window. He was sitting on a bed of lettuce under a heat lamp.
Also this bit.
This cat is quite clearly pregnant.
He is? I thought it was all the beer I've been giving her.
So, just as in the original, Lister is called in to see the captain, who is just a completely different character this time, which is fine. I like Captain Hollister, but it's not like he had a lot of screen time.
Security went over last night's surveillance tapes of you in your room.
I see that the ship's flagrant disregard for the crew's privacy hasn't changed.
Suppose someone did have a cat. What would happen if I gave it to you?
I'd have it cut up and run tests on it.
Well, with all due respect, Captain, what's in it for the cat?
In this version, Crichton is an accomplice and he can't lie, but he tries hard enough that he ends up exploding.
In certain countries, that's considered a delicacy.
So once again, Lister has to choose between giving up the cat and going into stasis, and we know where this is going.
What happened?
I think I did really well this time.
In this version, Rimmer's test happened off-screen. That's one problem with this pilot. They added so much that some things had to be left out, one of which was some of Rimmer's defining moments. Another change is that Kochanski learned about Lister saving the cat, so she's suddenly in love with him now.
I probably would have done the same thing in your shoes.
And you do in an alternate timeline. Yeah, it does hurt her character, but it's sort of cute how it makes Lister suddenly not want to go into stasis now that it's too late.
Hi, Dave. I think you better come up to the command bridge. The entire crew was subjected to a lethal dose of cadmium-2.
Is everyone okay?
Everybody's dead, Dave. That's what lethal means.
Of course that "everybody's dead, Dave" gag is gone, but I think it's for the best, since only Norman Lovett could pull that off.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
And now Lister is about to find out how long he was in stasis.
Really? You're gonna laugh. Just under 3 million years.
My baseball cards must be worth a fortune.
I love that line. Deal with it, haters. I also love this line.
My memory is shot, all my circuits are breaking down. Actually, that one felt kind of good.
It looks like we have light beat technology already. Also, the reason for Rimmer being a hologram in this one is because his was the only personality chip that remained intact, because Lister is just that unlucky.
I'm the only one alive on the whole ship.
All 5,000 people wiped out? This is terrific. I'm in charge.
That's definitely something Rimmer would say.
Awooga! Awooga!
What are you doing?
Sorry, I can't remember where I put the siren.
So Holly just detected a non-human life form, so they go and check it out.
So what's it feel like?
Death?
Yeah.
It's like being at an Amish bachelor party.
Sorry, haters, I like that one too. On the way, they find Crichton. They hadn't finished repairing him before the accident.
You've been stuck here for 3 million years? What have you been doing?
Well, I've been reading that fire exit sign over there. It's given me a lot of solace over the years.
I managed to locate the alien thing. It's waiting for you in the cargo hold.
Cargo hold? That's where I hid the cat.
In a way, I'm not a big fan of how this is handled.
It's quite tricky to get a handle on. How simple do you want it?
So Lister can understand it.
Oh dear.
Before we meet Cat, we basically have it explained to us what he is, along with the entire history of his race. And I'm really not a fan of this terrible animation. Granted, she's dumbing it down enough for Lister to understand, so I guess that's the joke, but I just feel like it kind of hurts the flow.
They formed a civilization around the things they found in storage.
I think that audience was gassed by the Joker.
Marvin Abbott, 555-8976.
Also, in this version, it's stated that Cat is the only survivor of the war among the cat people, so they don't leave it open for any more of them to show up later. One thing that I do think is kind of cool is that they play it as if there's some terrifying cat-like mutation just around the corner. I mean, Rule of Funny states that that won't be the case anyway, but I still think the contrast of what they're expecting versus what they find to be kind of fun.
Okay. Be big.
This cat is played by Hinton Battle, who I'm going to talk more about when I do a separate video about the cat. For now, I'll just say that he plays it differently, but still does a good job with it. He's definitely more manic.
This string is mine. He evolved from cat, sir, just as your distant ancestors once swung from trees.
Ancestors? His grandparents swung from trees.
Okay, I kind of like that line too.
I saved your original ancestor. Your whole existence is due to me.
Thanks.
That's good too. So, now that he's had some time to think, Lister really doesn't know what to do.
I mean, in a sick way, it's really kind of impressive, you know? I started out with absolutely nothing. And I couldn't hang on to it.
And here's some more stuff that ends up later in the UK series. Future versions of Lister, Cat Crichton, and Kochanski show up and give them an important message.
This is very important. Everything hangs on this. You gotta...
Again, that was kind of funny.
What are you doing?
You heard him. I gotta...
Got to what?
Well, I gotta...
So Lister just kind of guesses that he's got to get back to Earth.
Maybe we could find parallel universes or time warps, black holes, you know, space stuff.
Too bad he can't figure out how to work the controls.
Go! And go. What the hell is wrong with this thing?
Look out, Earth, the slime's coming home.
Dear Diary, I think we've made a good start on our journey back home.
And we end on some clips from the original show as an example of what one could expect from the rest of the series, narrated by Holly in the way that Season 1 used to have Holly doing those distress calls.
I wish I had time to tell you everything that's happened, but you'll get the details later.
And so ends Red Dwarf USA pilot, the first one. As I'm sure you can tell, I don't hate this like everyone else seems to. It does definitely have its flaws, and I will get into that, but honestly, I think it's okay. Yeah, some of the comedic lines are a bit forced, but others do get genuine laughs out of me. I mean, there are good shows out there that started off with mediocre pilots, so had this been greenlit, it could have made a good series. Now, of course, I'm being completely objective here. Naturally, it pales in comparison to the original, but viewed completely on its own, I honestly don't think it's that bad. However, it is definitely lacking in some areas. One is Rimmer. This actor gets a lot of hate, and while he's not bursting with charisma like Chris Berry, to be completely fair to the guy, they didn't give him a whole lot of material to work with. About half of the scenes that were originally between Lister and Rimmer are between Lister and Crichton here, and every scene that involved Rimmer's test, save for him being carted off on a stretcher afterwards, was left out, so Rimmer isn't left with a lot of characterization here. I don't even think it's made clear whether he shares a room with Lister or not. There's also pretty much no legitimate drama. The original pilot was kind of dark in some areas, and while the Everybody's Dead Dave scene was mostly played for laughs, it had a lot of weight to it too. Lister is having so much trouble wrapping his head around the fact that everybody's dead, and it's funny, but kind of sad at the same time. There's nothing like that in this pilot. I think at the end of the day, the biggest problem with this pilot is that they tried to cram in too many references to later seasons and too many random jokes. It just didn't leave room for any depth. The weight of the original is missing, and the characters aren't developed enough. But in a purely superficial way, I will admit that I do find it kind of entertaining. It's not great, but it's not painful either. However, I know I'm in the minority with that opinion. The creators hated the script and they rewrote it and came up with something better, which the studio shot down. I highly recommend watching the documentary for the full story. Just all that they had to deal with, being promised that if they wrote a new script it would be considered, and then the producer going back on it, all that drama, it's crazy. So after they went back to the UK, they were invited back to try to fix what went wrong with the first pilot. But once again, it was a disaster. They had a shoestring budget and they couldn't get all of the cast to come back. They tried to get Chris Berry to play Rimmer and he declined. They also considered Danny John Jules for the cat, but he was unavailable. What they ended up making for the second pilot wasn't a pilot so much as a demo reel of various scenes, most of which were taken from scripts of the old show with little changes here and there. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the rights to the footage for the documentary. I think NBC owns it, so we're stuck with the bad quality one I got off of YouTube.
You ever see the Flintstones?
Sure.
You think Wilma's sexy?
The first clip is the Wilma Flintstone conversation from Backwards. Originally, Lister was having that conversation with a cat, but now it's with Rimmer. Honestly, I know that fans love that scene, and it is funny, but I always thought it seemed odd for Cat to be familiar enough with human pop culture to automatically know who Wilma Flintstone is.
Well, I would go with Betty. But I'd be thinking of Wilma.
So that scene always did kind of bug me a little. This version takes into account that Rimmer wouldn't be having this conversation in a serious way.
Do you have any conception of how crazy you sound? You're talking about going to bed with Wilma Flintstone.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's mostly just Lister being stupid.
She'll never leave Fred. I know it.
It works okay, but Lister and Cat both being stupid together was funnier.
This is an insane conversation. She'll never leave Fred, and we know it.
At least now we know that Lister and Rimmer are bunkmates. Next up is a distress call from Lister, which ends up as a very similar scene in Season 7.
Let's see. Our crew number's 5. Besides me, there's, Arnold Rimmer.
Only here we get clips from the first pilot inserted.
He's just a projection, which means that he can't touch anything except himself. So basically, his sex life is unchanged.
Sure enough, that line works better when it's Lister knocking Rimmer rather than some guy knocking himself, for some reason. After that is the scene with Holly and Lister with a comment about the baseball card collection and Holly malfunctioning.
And then there's the cat.
So they couldn't get Hinton Battle or Danny John Jules or anyone else with a similar background to play the cat, so they completely retooled the character and it's now a female cat played by Terry Farrell.
What the fuck is that?
He's got some pretty weird ideas about relationships.
Again, I'll give most of my thoughts on all this when I make a video about the cat, which I'm planning to do after this.
Are you scared, Humi?
Roaming around this ship somewhere, there is an armor-plated genetic mutant who wants to impregnate all of us with his demon seed. Yeah, I got butterflies.
Wow, it took all the way to Season 11 for that idea to be used.
You stay here and suck your thumb, and I'll go and rip off its head, spit down its throat, and turn its lower intestines into balloon animals.
Heh, that was a reference to Justice.
Well, the basic difference is that an android would never rip off a human's head and spit down his neck.
Maybe someday I'll find the 8 or 9 guys who are right for me, and then my rambling days will be over.
For what it's worth, I think that line makes a lot more sense coming from a female cat.
And as soon as I find the right small group of girls, the 7 or 8 women who are right for me, my wandering days are over, buddy.
We are going to get this rust bucket back to Earth, and when we do...
What are you doing? I don't think you're recording. Look, the red light's on.
I don't want to mess this up. It's the last message capsule we have.
Trust me and press the green button and say your message over again.
Typical Rimmer.
Hey, that was really great. Now they'll know exactly where to find us.
So now we're doing Marooned. The main difference is that the wording of some lines have been Americanized. Pot noodle becomes cup of noodles and bum becomes butt.
Golf course? How old were you?
12.
I'm really surprised they didn't change that. Statutory rape isn't something that's taken lightly here.
Well, I hope you raked the sand back before you left. Competition the next day and your ball lands in Lister's buttock crevice.
You trying to say I have a big butt?
It's like 2 badly parked Volkswagen Beetles.
No matter which version it is, I always think that Rimmer's criticizing Lister's butt size is funny.
I say I've got a big bump.
That's not normally an insult that you hear men saying to each other, I don't think. I also noticed that this version of Rimmer comes across as super nerdy and uptight.
Did it in the back of my brother's car.
What was it like?
Sensational. Bentley convertible, V8 turbo.
It kind of works on its own.
Aliens. Oh, let's hope they're the good kind.
This scene appears to have been inspired by Back to Reality, but the dialogue is from various places.
Beautiful women with beehive hairdos who say things like, show us more about this Earth thing called kissing.
No beautiful blondes with beehive hairdos who say, show me some more of this Earth thing called kissing.
There's an old cat proverb. It says it's better to live an hour as a tiger than a lifetime as a worm.
There's an old human saying, who ever heard of a wormskin rug?
That's another exchange that happens in a later episode. If reality means YouTube in really poor quality, yeah. And so ends Red Dwarf USA pilot, the second one. Once again, it's okay. The second pilot is less interesting than the first because there's fewer original lines, but I think some of the character interaction works better. So, do I wish Red Dwarf USA had been picked up?
No!
Not so much because I think it's bad, though. Mainly because if that happened, the UK creators and Robert Llewellyn would have had to move to America permanently to work on this show, and Red Dwarf UK Seasons 6 and up most likely would not have happened. Also, there's kind of a dark cloud hanging over this project with how the original cast who was left out felt kind of betrayed and how much drama was involved behind the scenes. Craig Charles makes a joke about the whole cast being white in the second pilot.
It was White Dwarf. In the future, it was like black people. Someone's punning on us not being here.
To be fair, they didn't set out to do that. Hattie Hayridge makes a great comment that I basically agree with and probably explains why I don't hate the pilots as much as other fans.
They were much better than I thought they'd be because they'd been so slagged off by the fans that I thought, God, they're going to be really dreadful.
There is one argument against the idea of an Americanized Red Dwarf that I disagree with, and that's that Red Dwarf is so rooted in British culture that there's no way it could translate properly. And in the documentary, Craig Charles and Chris Berry bring up the class system. The thing is, we may not have that exact notion in America to the extent that they do, but there certainly are groups of people who don't get along with each other. I mean, in the case of Lister and Rimmer, we have slackers, and we have people who are obsessed with getting ahead. In the case of Lister and Kachansky, we have poor people and rich people, and they don't tend to mingle. At the end of the day, it's about throwing people with different backgrounds and clashing personalities together and watching the sparks fly. It's not purely a British phenomenon. And Doug Naylor says as much in the documentary. But speaking as someone who didn't know that much about British culture, when I started watching Red Dwarf, I took to it pretty much immediately, unlike Absolutely Fabulous, which I just couldn't get into at all. With Red Dwarf, there's the occasional little cultural reference or piece of slang that I don't really get, but they generally aren't that hard to figure out, and the ones that are tend to go by so quickly that I don't care. And even that stuff is rare, to be honest. Not to mention that the longer Red Dwarf goes on, the more the dialogue feels more like something out of an American comedy. I suspect that Doug Naylor learned a lot from trying to make an American sitcom, and that kind of style rubbed off on him. There are lines in season 10 that sound like they're straight out of Seinfeld.
Women have moved on from that move.
Moves don't move on.
Moves move on.
What moves move?
Don't you know the difference between salsa and salsa? You have the salsa after the salsa.
So yeah, what I'm taking too long to say is that Red Dwarf is not so inaccessible to Americans. You don't have to be an Anglophile to enjoy it. And there's no reason why an American Red Dwarf series couldn't work in theory, just this one didn't. I don't know what Craig Bierko is doing now. His Wikipedia page is full of one-shot characters he's played on various sitcoms and such, and I've heard that he was a runner-up for playing Joey on Friends. Apparently he does a lot of Broadway work. Whatever he's doing, I hope he's successful, because I do like him. Although apparently even he thinks he was a bad choice for Lister.
It should have been like a John Belushi type guy. But America went, well, we'll do like a Han Solo thing. And I was like, well, I want to pay rent, so great, but it's instantly not funny because it should be the opposite of what you've seen in Star Wars.
The first actor who played Rimmer hasn't been in anything I've seen, but his filmography is pretty big. Anthony Fusco, the second Rimmer, doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so I don't know what happened to him. I will say more about Hinton Battle in another video, and of course Terry Farrell went on to play Dax in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So it's kind of funny that she graduated from being in a show that was based on another show that kind of poked fun at Star Trek to an actual Star Trek series. And I'm sure just about everyone watching this recognizes Jane Leeves as Daphne Moon from Frasier. So that's about all I have to say about Red Dwarf USA. Yeah, it's not great, it definitely doesn't live up to the original, but I don't find it offensive either. I think it's okay, but just okay. Next up, I'm finally going to do that video about the cat. I'm not sure how soon it'll be because I don't know how in-depth I'm gonna go with it. Either way, that'll be the next Red Dwarf related thing. See you then.